Member for Murray.
Thank you, Acting Speaker, and I'd like to use this opportunity to talk in relation to gas and electricity pricing and availability within my electorate and in fact the majority of Victoria. As we have seen just recently, there has been an incredible increase in the price of gas in many of the industries that are my regions, the electorate of Murray and within the Goulburn Valley. Our main employers can loosely be described as the food processors of the region. So whether that be Kagomi with its tomato, tinned and processed tomatoes, or the various dairy processes of Parmalat or Bega or Murray Goulburn, Fonterra, Tatura Milk, Parmalat. These are serious and substantial employers in the Goulburn Valley, and yet all of them are under extreme pressure with the spiralling gas prices and soon-to-be spiralling electricity prices that are going to hit them. Also, Unilever out of Tatura is certainly another industry, another company that's going to be under extreme pressure once these, already, and certainly even more so once the electricity prices have their increases flow through as well. I think just recently at the press club, the Prime Minister, in his address to the press club in Canberra last week, absolutely nailed this issue. His ability to quite clearly put these policies of state governments at the forefront of the situation we now find ourselves in. And therefore, we have this very stark... Previously, we have been simply talking along ideological lines. Sure, we would all love to have a greater spread of renewables. Certainly we would, until something goes wrong, until we have an outage. And all of a sudden we realise that this unhealthy reliance that we have on a connector out of Victoria simply can't supply the energy that a whole state might need, in this case South Australia. But also what we now have is with a state Labor government in Victoria facilitating the closure of Hazelwood, effectively also putting the use-by date on Loy Yang, and all of a sudden moving into an unviable percentage of renewables that simply isn't going to allow the industries within and the companies and the businesses within Victoria maintain their commercial edge because of the increases in prices. And again, the Prime Minister got it right when he said what we need to be doing is we need to be looking for a reliable source of energy. And we need to be looking at an affordable supply of energy. And then we also need to make sure that we cut emissions so that we stay within our commitments that we have made under the Paris Agreement. And we need to look after, in the process of doing these three things, we need to look after jobs. Because what we now have is this very stark relationship between the Labor Party, but certainly state Labor governments and their policies in relation to energy, whether that be electricity or whether that be gas. We have a stark relationship between their policies and the real threats that are coming into the jobs of the Goulburn Valley. And as I was just laid out, 6 or 7 or 8 major employers that are all going to be under extreme pressure to remain viable under these policies that are currently leading to these extreme price rises. As we know, over the previous few years, and in legislation being debated in the Victorian Parliament today, they are going to be continuing to put a full moratorium on conventional gas drilling. Now, this has nothing to do with fracking, and you can bet your bottom dollar that those who are opposed to natural gas will be trying to cloud the issue as best they possibly can, and they'll be saying that we want to start pumping dangerous chemicals down into our aquifers, putting our aquifers and our groundwater at risk, No, we don't. Most certainly we don't. We are happy to keep a long-term ban on fracking until the scientists can prove that no damage will be done. And if they can't prove that, then we leave the ban on fracking. However, conventional drilling for conventional gas is somewhere where this country has to move. What's happened over the last few years, we've had this situation where the southern Queensland gas fields are now all connected via the pipelines, 3 separate companies, 3 separate pipelines, 420 kilometres, all the way from the Bowen Basin all the way through to Gladstone. What this has done now, it's linked all of the eastern states and the eastern part of Australia. Their gas supplies are now all linked to Asia, and the demand over there is insatiable. So now, when it comes back to our own domestic needs, we're finding not only our mum and dad's gas prices to heat the home, to do the cooking, to just live our normal lives, not only are those prices going through the roof and making it very difficult for those that Mr Broadbent spoke about, those in the lower socioeconomic areas, which mainly the National Party represent. Not only are they going to do it hard, but when they go off to work, their businesses that have employed them in many instances for 15 and 20 years, their businesses are now under extreme pressure because they simply are unable to accept an extra $1 million that is going to be added onto the cost of the inputs to these various food processors. So I'm happy to say that in the next couple of weeks, next 2.5 weeks, the Minister for Resources, Matt Canavan, is going to be coming to the Golden Valley to meet with many of these food processors, and this opportunity to meet Minister Canavan will be open to other industries that are also heavy users of gas, because we simply need to make sure that if we are going to change these policies, we need to get our policy settings right. We need to make sure that the farmers still have the right of veto. So if a farmer doesn't want to have gas fields on his, or gas wells on his farm, then he should be able to have the right of veto. And we've got to push hard to make sure that is the case. We've got to make sure that when we are talking to people, we don't let the argument be run off to the side by what Queensland Premier Anna Bligh called the worst debate that she has ever been a part of, because the Lock the Gate people took that debate and absolutely made it impossible for her to run a proper process in bringing gas to northern Victoria. And we have no doubt that I also believe that it is a very, very poor debate once those in the community who are very much against gas are going to cloud the debate. We know now that many of these larger companies that use a lot of gas, now previous contracts that might have been signed 2 to 3 years ago, they had an opportunity to choose between 4 providers for their gas supplies into their businesses. Now they are given one provider who has a take it or leave it type approach to them, with, as I say, gas prices doubling over 2 to 3 years. Whether it be the closure of Hazelwood and the potential closure of Loy Yang, whether it be this unholy push to ensure that coal is spoken about in the most horrendous tones, with no thought to the supercritical ability of low emissions coal, the ability to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 1/3 in relation to some of these new processing plants. I think these are the types of debates that this country needs to have. We have built our industries on cheap energy inputs, and we have forged out many iconic industries. Certainly in the Golden Valley, we have those iconic industries that have been there for many, many years, for many generations. For generations, they have run these businesses, and they're very much a part of our community. And we need to give them every chance to make sure that our children and grandchildren will also have those businesses in our community as well. And right at the moment, the real threat is coming from energy costs. and we need to go back and have a calm debate, a calm conversation about what we are doing with our electricity prices and our policies, and also our gas prices and their policies.
The question is that grievances be noted.